Okay, so we're now inside the boat, inside the forward cabin. The nature of this video is not a systems-based video, it's an entire vessel-based video. Therefore, when I move through the cabin, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff all at once. So it's more of a location-based thing as we just move our way through. So be prepared for lots of systems talked about all at once, but it's just about what's here and what's located in this area. So without further ado, let's head all the way forward and talk about what's up there. Okay, sorry for this awkward position I need to lay in, but I do need to be like this to talk about the equipment over here. So just here on the side is a Webasto heater vent. So Webasto is the diesel heater on board. There's another whole video on that one too. So feel free to look at that if you want to go in depth into that particular topic. But you'll see that we have these louvered vents. You can close them all the way. I usually recommend to folks that you leave these ones shut because it is such a long way from the main unit. It does draw a lot of the fan power. So up at the helm, when you're driving and you need that defogging type situation up there, if these are open, you'll see that you'll lose a lot of pressure up at the window defogging. So when you close these on the port and starboard side in the forward cabin, you'll gain a lot more pressure up there. So definitely recommend to keep these shut unless, of course, you're sleeping down here and you need to be warm or you want to have them open. So that's that one. There's one on the other side, which is identical. And you see that one right there. And so shutting that one does the same. It closes off the flow. Okay, so also on the port side, you'll have a charging port. They are fast chargers, slightly faster than normal, I suppose, 2.4 amps with 2 USB-A plugins. At least that's what's in this particular model. It can change a little bit from model to model. All right, so moving along in our journey, under this bed, there's a lot of stuff. So I'm going to proceed to remove these cushions off camera, and then we will talk about everything that's under there. Notice I'm lifting up these little wings here. These are basically steps if you're coming in from the outside. We'll talk about the gull wing doors in a moment. This vessel has them, not all of them do, but if you do, we'll talk about that soon. Okay, wings are up, cushions will be off in just a sec. Okay, so panels are all removed and we're going to work our way through and talk about everything that we see. So starting all the way forward in this little hatch all by itself is the bow thruster battery, and it also is for the windlass as well. So that there is controlled by this particular device, which turns it on and off. When you rock that switch backwards and forwards under the helm seat that we showed you earlier, you'll hear a clunking as you're turning the battery on and off. What's actually happening is this device is being controlled remotely, and it's essentially making the connection with this. So when I rock that switch forward, that's what you're hearing. You're hearing this device bring this battery into the system and allowing power to flow from the positive and negative terminal here all the way to the equipment at the bow. So that's how that works. Moving back, we have some large fuses related to both those pieces of equipment. Hopefully you should never need to change those. These are really just a kind of safety feature. If something's going to go, it's probably going to be that little pop-out fuse, that little thermal overload 70 amp breaker up in the bow if something does go. So these will be rare to go, but if it's still not working, come check down here. Next one along is our bow thruster itself. So when we thrust to the port or to the starboard, this is the machine that is going to be making all the noise. Inside the tunnel in here is a gearbox and a propeller, and that will push the thrust port or starboard, depending on whether or not it's running in forward or reverse, right? So next item to look at is this hot water manifold. If you do not have a hot water heater, this will not be on your boat. The reason we're seeing pink is because this is a stock vessel and not currently, it doesn't currently have an owner. So it's still got the antifreeze in the system, which would all be flushed out. So normally, if it's in use, the vessel is in use, these lines will all be clear liquid as opposed to the RV antifreeze, which is in the system right now. So this heater hose here is a little bit different to the rest of them because this one comes directly off the heater itself. So this is the hottest portion of the leg, the water run, I should say, that runs into the hot water manifold. That's why it looks a little different. And then moving right along, we have the water pump itself. As I said before, there is another video on the water system itself. So feel free to look at that one where we talk about the water system components only at a bit of a slower pace, and it is very water system centric, that one. So there's a strainer right here on the pump that is going to catch any foreign debris between the tank and the pump, because that's where that comes from, directly off the tank. It sucks it in this way through a impeller that's in here, and then this pressure switch will basically tell the pump whether to run or not, depending on the system pressure. And it runs into this manifold right here. This is the line that runs to the heater. I don't think it really needs to be this high temperature hose, but it is. This one here will run to that heater, and then it'll get heated, and then it'll go back into here, and then to all the hot water taps. And then these lines here will be various different water devices around the vessel, like sinks and showers and things of that nature, toilet, right? While we're talking about that, let's dive over here and show you the toilet solenoid. So when you flush your toilet with quote unquote fresh water, what is happening is it's running into here. This valve that's electrically controlled will open, and the water will flow through here and then to the toilet. Notice the nature of this hose is a sani hose, or a sanitary hose. So that's why that one looks a little different. That's what it does. In the corner over here is your windshield washer fluid. So you will need to top this up when the window washer doesn't work or runs out of water. It does not run from the house water system. The window washer has its own system, and that is only filled by this particular little port right here. There is the internationally recognized window washer symbol that you would find in any automotive scenario. That is right on top of the can, so it's very hard to mistake that for anything else other than windshield washer fluid. My feet are now resting directly on the freshwater tank itself. This here is an inspection port. You should never need to open this. The filling is done up in the bow locker by unscrewing that cap that we were talking about earlier. Just so you know where the water flows to, it flows right down this tube from that cap into the tank itself. This here is the vent tube. So as liquid takes up volume inside this tank, the volume of air will decrease and it'll escape through this tube. As the water pump draws liquid out of the tank, then that volume will be replaced with air that is drawn in through this tube. Okay, so one last feature down here to talk about is right down below, and you'll see it labeled as Precision 9. Most vessels will have one of these devices in there. It is related to the electronics system, and it's what allows the electronics system to know exactly which way the boat is facing. So it's essentially a solid state electronic compass, and that's directly connected to the back of the screens via the NEMA 2000 electronics network. All right, so that's pretty much everything that we need to talk about in this particular area. Oh, hang on a second. One more thing. So this little guy right here, we showed you the remote control earlier that works for the windlass. It actually also has a bow thruster control as well, but that is essentially sending a wireless signal directly to this antenna, which then can remotely control both of those two pieces of equipment as well. So that is actually the last piece of equipment down here. Okay, let's close it all back up again, and we'll continue our journey through the boat. Okay, so through the magic of film, we have just put all these cushions back in place, and we're going to keep moving through the boat. Okay, so to my right and to my left, and the port and starboard of this forward cabin, this particular vessel is equipped with gull wing doors. These things are pretty cool, and they definitely look pretty awesome from the outside as well when they're both opened up. They serve a couple of purposes. One is obviously access, easy access in and out of this cabin, which is fantastic. Another one is great airflow as well. So there's a button just located up here for this particular one. It is a push button, regardless of the locked or unlocked state on the outside of the boat, which we'll talk about in a minute, or we may have already talked about that, but pressing this button here will allow this to open. It's not a bad idea to have your hand on this handle, and it's always a great idea to make sure that no one is out there, because this thing will open up sometimes quite quickly and has the potential to knock someone overboard if you're not paying attention, or if they're not paying attention to their surroundings outside. So pressing this button will open this up. Once it gets to about here, I'm free. I'll just let that go. and it'll go all the way to the up and open position. I can immediately feel it get cooler in here. The airflow that's now inside this cabin, just from being that one door being open, has made a massive difference. Sunlight as well coming through there, it makes a big difference for that too. It really makes this a kind of a cool place to hang out on a sunny day. If you just want to escape the sun for a little bit, come lie down here and read a book, you can have these open, have the airflow and the sun kind of into the room, but you can hide up there a little bit where it's shadier out of the sun as well. So a really nice feature to take advantage of. The one on this side, I'll leave that one alone for now because we were just focusing on how they operate. But just so you know, the button for that one is that. You just press it and it will just open right up. And then to close it, you just pull it, and you need to give it quite a good tug to get it to close. And I'm going to show you that in a second. I will need to stand up here, grab that handle and pull it down. And get to about here, and then down we go. Notice it says keep shut while underway. As cool as it looks when they're both opened up, never run your boat like that. Always have them closed, down, and in the lock position when underway. Okay, so a couple of cup holders sitting around the place here, and here. So you can put things, cups in those locations. This particular boat is equipped with some storage lockers as well. So over here, you'll see there's a push button and you can open that up. There's a space heater in there for now that is not being utilized as it's about 25 degrees out and we don't need it. That's 25 degrees Celsius for our friends over the border. And under this here is access to the waste tank shutoff valve. So that right there is the valve that is responsible for discharging toilet waste or the holding tank waste or black water overboard and out that tube. At the moment, it's in the closed position. You should leave it in the closed position when you're not using it. Just before you go and pump overboard, you want to put that in the open position. You know it's open because the valve itself is parallel with the flow of the water. So this is what's known as a ball valve. So there's a ball essentially with a hole in the middle of it. And when you close that, then the hole is going that way and shutting off the flow of water. Just nestled in behind that is the forward bilge pump. You'll see a switch on the dash that says forward bilge pump, and that's that one right there. Okay, so I'm going to close this back up again. All boats will have this. Some boats have some wooden floorboards, and some boats have this carpet overlay, but all of them will have the hatch in that exact same location. There's no difference. Okay, so in this room here, we have also some safety equipment for detecting odors and smoke. Not so much odors, but carbon monoxide and smoke right here. So this one here is actually a battery operated system. So you'll see a little battery on the inside. These have a tendency to beep when they're low battery to remind you to change them. So that could be that. I'll leave that down for now. And then this one here is actually connected to the service battery directly. So if I was to take that off, I'd see hard wires connected to that one. And this one also has a tendency to go off under low voltage scenarios. So if you have got flat batteries, you'll notice this will go off a lot. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, so for this room here, I think that's about all we have here. We'll move through to the head. Okay, so next stop along the journey is this center section, which is partitioned off, which makes a head and shower area. Not every Axopar 37 is going to have this setup. There are some vessels that do not have this, and it's more of an open area. That's more reserved for the ones without the gull wing doors. But this particular version has one, so we're going to go through all of its features. So I mentioned that there is a partition. Both sides do partition off to close this in entirely. So for privacy, you can close this door right here. We can have another look at that from the outside if you like. And I can reach up here, ouch, watch your head, and grab this little handle and pull this thing all the way down. Okay, and then I'm going to lock myself in here. And then I'm now in the bathroom privately and no one can disturb me. Okay, so like all of the hatches that have a griffin lock, that's what these are called, these griffin locks, you just press to release and it will just open up all by itself, and then we grab this one and slide it back over and then we've opened it back up to the way it needs to be. So there's a couple of devices here, and let's talk about those all individually. What we have is a 12 volt power socket. So any standard kind of cigarette lighter based device that you can buy online or at automotive stores, marine resellers, things like that. You'll have a 12 volt power supply coming directly from here. So this is essentially service battery supply. This will become energized when you turn the service battery switch on in there. We went through that earlier at the beginning. The next piece of equipment up here is the Fusion input device pad here. So it says Fusion on the front, so you know it's connected to the radio and stereo. You lift it up and you'll see that there's a USB-A, so you can directly connect things like phones or other mass storage media devices directly in there. And just below it is a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. So literally any device that plays music that can run a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack situation can plug directly into here, and then you can choose up on the display or down here on the Fusion panel the source input and select one of these right here. So just more auxiliary inputs is essentially what these are about. And you can charge something slowly from this particular port. So if you've used all your ports already, you can run a cable up to the dash, but the new 2023 models do have a dedicated fast charging USB port over on the starboard side, and I'll show you that later. But this used to be the only one, but now there's more. Okay, so we're going to cut there because there's not much else to show you unless I close these doors. So let's change the camera angles and we'll look at things from another angle. Okay, so we're not quite finished talking about everything on this bulkhead right here. You'll notice from the last roll of footage that there were some light switches right above the Fusion input. And right here is a light switch, and you'll notice when I flick it on and off, it's going to turn on ambient lighting. And it is in this section in here. So if you can, you see that light that comes on there underneath the shower area? So that is the same light switch that does that ambient lighting that also controls this room's ambient lighting as well. Okay, so that all comes on and off with this switch right here. And then the second switch is the lights directly above my head. Okay, now also directly above my head are two Webasto vents. I'm going to get down low so I can point at both of them. Here's one here. They do not have the louvers. And here's one up here. Also no louver. These sometimes are mistaken for part of the Webasto diesel heater system, and they are not. They simply just bear the markings of the Webasto logo on the bezel. However, these are just a straight shot to the outside world. So these are simply just something you can open from the outside while turning them. We're going to take some B-roll footage and we're going to splice it on top of me talking right now, so you can see me unscrewing those and screwing them back down again. The advantage to having that fresh air is that when you are having a shower or something like that, you can open those up before you have a shower, and then fresh air can exit, and enter and exit, or the steamy air can exit as well. And you know, it can be a way to get fresh air in if you have everything else shut. It is a good idea to keep those shut at all times when not being used. We do have a lot of people call in and say there's something wrong, something's moving or rattling around, and sometimes we find that those vents aren't closed all the way because it's a very fast boat. The air gets moving pretty quickly and it will enter those vents and it will make a whistling noise, or things will start to move and vibrate a little bit. So if you do intend on going fast, which I'm sure you do because you just bought an Axopar, you can screw those down and make sure they're tight, okay? All right, so without further ado, let's move inside to the head area and we'll talk about some of the stuff in here. Okay, so as you have noticed probably by now, I'm sitting on top of the toilet. So there's nothing special about what's going in here. It's just a bowl, but it is washed, or the rim washes the fresh water system. It does not bring salt water in. All of them are fresh water. They draw it from the tank that we looked at earlier. That's located under the forward bunk. So there's two switches for the toilet and they're located down here. It will be a dual motion. You will need to fill and then you'll need to flush. Other ones will be just a fill and flush both together, okay? So it just depends on the model you have as to which switch setup operation you have. Okay, also while I'm down here, just at my left knee, there's this guy right here, just for toilet rolls, so you just pop your toilet roll right on there. Inside here isn't really much to to see, it's more of a service access location, so no storage really even in here to talk about. But on top of the on top of this area here, you'll see that there's all these connections to the holding tank. So your black water tank is actually right here, and a service item located in this area, maybe you'll have to follow me in here, is if you look right back inside, I'm pointing to a big black long filter. That is something that is a serviceable item that you'll need to change on a semi-regular basis. That is a holding tank vent filter. So we spoke earlier about the vent line that was on the freshwater tank. Excuse me. On this holding tank right here, there is also a vent line. However, black water systems vent lines will need to have a like a charcoal scrubber. So whenever you flush the toilet, the air that's been sitting on top of all of those fluids and whatnot will, they'll have a smell to them, and you don't want to smell that every time you flush your toilet, because that air will evacuate out of the boat and end up in the outside air. So anyone standing outside on deck, if you do not have a filter or an operational filter, then everyone outside will smell that. So semi-regular basis, this thing will need to be switched out. So once a year, usually. If you happen to overflow your holding tank, the first place that overflow goes is actually up the vent tube, and it will wet out that carbon canister. So if that gets wet, you'll need to replace it immediately. It becomes completely useless. So something important to note, and that's why we say never to overflow your holding tank, is because you'll have to immediately buy one of these for around, I think they're around $150 maybe these days. So yeah, definitely don't do that. Okay, talking of holding tank levels, maybe that's a great segue to talk about this panel right here. So come on around the corner and I'll show you this main switch panel. So everything from here down is what's referred to as a pop-out fuse. It is resettable. It's a resettable fuse, so multi-use. Nothing here can be pulled out that's above this line. They're all just labeled with the amount of amps that they will pop at, and they're very clearly labeled as to what they're for. Every boat has the same panel, more or less, and you will see things on here that you may not necessarily have as an option. So just because you see a pop-out fuse for it, it doesn't mean it's on your boat, but if it is on your boat, the fuse will be located right here. So moving down just below that is a row of switches that you can interact with. So this one here is the macerator. The valve was something we looked at earlier, and it's located under the floor in the forward cabin. We peeled back the carpet and we exposed that valve. That needs to be first opened, and then you come here and then you press this button, and then you pump out your holding tank until you hear the gurgling of air bubbles also escaping. It can take a minute or two for everything to escape out of the tank. The tank is not enormous, so be mindful when you are filling it up. If you have lots of people on board, it's obviously going to fill up quite quickly if you're using the toilet. When it gets to 75% full, because right here you have an indicator light which turns red when you are at that 75% full level. So when that turns red, I would probably just stop using your tank and find a way to pump it out immediately, because the last thing you want to do is overflow that tank for the reasons we talked about earlier. Also in here is a row of switches as well. You'll notice when we flush the toilet, I proceeded to turn the freshwater pump on, and that is underneath here. So this guy here is in the off position right now. I know it's off because it's popped out and the white collar is showing. That turns the pump on, that turns the pump off. No pump on, no system pressure. Moving along, everything else here is fridges. Fridge. As I said, if you don't have all these options in your boat, then these switches may not be connected to anything. It does tell you here that down is on and up is off. So that's how that works. Okay, so sink and faucet right here, and additional storage in here. This is somewhere where you can put things. If you're going to do some go fast boating and you happen to have, your toiletries and things like that sitting up on the bench, here's a great place just to scoop them into and have them not bang around and break and go everywhere in the cabin as you're going ridiculous speeds. Okay, so for this room, I think we're pretty much good. There's not much else I can talk about in here other than the shower behind us, but we will change camera angles and we're going to talk about that one next. All right, so just quickly, we'll talk about this one. Here's our shower wand. This area, once fully closed up, is designed so all of the water collects, and underneath the floor in this gap area, it'll roll down into a sump down there, and that will discharge overboard. There's a little float, so it'll reach a certain point. So you'll hear it kick in and kick off and kick in and kick off periodically while you're running your shower. So that's how that works. There is a mixing valve right here. So you'll have to mix it as you go up. It starts off cold and it gets hotter and hotter. So it doesn't come out, it just continues to circle around. The more this way you go, the hotter it will get. If you do not have a hot water tank, obviously you won't have that feature, okay? And then this guy just pops back up here, and the height is adjustable. If you do want to sit down and just go full automatic mode, you can set it to the height and jump under there and do your thing. Okay, so that's how the shower works. Okay, there's actually been multiple videos out there, and in this full walkthrough video, I'm going to take the opportunity to do something I haven't done yet in any other video, and that's to actually pull this floor up and show you what that sump looks like. So if we look down below, we have removed that floor panel that I was referring to that catches all the water when you're having a shower. So you'll see there's a trough around the outside of a raised portion. It'll run into this drain. That drain runs into this box here, and then from there it will get pumped overboard. There is also another port in here which collects water from somewhere else. This sink, actually, as it turns out. So you'll see that entering down below. It's pouring in there slowly. Yes, it's all pink. We've mentioned multiple times that this system is winterized right now, as it's still for sale, and this was how we received it. So that is how the sump system works, and it will just fill up and pump out as required. I'm going to put this panel back down, and we're going to continue on. Okay, so we're going to just bypass the helm. I know it's tempting to stop and look through all the awesome electronics in the dash, but let's save that bit till last because there's a lot to go through there and a lot to unpack. We're almost finished on the accommodation spaces. So if you do have a 37XC aft cabin or cabin aft cabin configuration, you'll see it through the window there. You can see the top. So we know automatically, just from looking from outside the vessel in, that this is the aft cabin configuration. From inside the vessel, you wouldn't probably know if you're just looking at the seat that there's another whole cabin in here. So the bench in the wet bar varieties will look just like this, but when you open the chair or the seating back here, you'll see some storage space. However, in this one, you'll open it up and it will give you access to the aft cabin. So let's dive in there and take a look at it. Grab this, two hands, stand to the side. There's going to be a little clip in here. Go all the way back, and then we click it on. We may need to reach around the back of it, actually. Make that fit. There we go. And that'll click into place. Okay, so we've now opened up our access to down below. Let's head down there and check it out. Okay, so you've entered this cabin and it's probably going to be dark and all closed up. So the first thing you want to do is get your muscle memory used to turning the light switches on, which are located right here on the starboard side of the vessel, but they'll be at your left hand as you're walking down. Okay, so come on inside and I'll show you some of the features. Okay, so looking up, we'll see that we have two escape hatches, 1, 2, and we can look at those again from the outside of the boat. In fact, we may have already looked at those, but there's little red switches here that control the locking dogs, and when you click those they will become unlocked just like this, or locked. So right here is unlocked, right here is unlocked. I can twist those and then I can push up and that will give me access to the outside. If there's a cushion on top of it, it'll be quite stiff, but you may still be able to push your way through it, even though there's the weight of a cushion on top in an emergency. But as a general rule, move your cushion first before you go accessing these. There are going to be some locking collars here as well. So once you push it up, you actually move these and you lock them down, and that will actually hold the hatch in the up position. So we will break and show you exactly what that looks like just now. As the forward cabin has amazing access to light and airflow with the gull wing doors open, as does the aft cabin. With these two access hatches open, it really does open this area up quite a lot. The blinds are still drawn, but have a look at the amazing difference here. We get this one open. We'll use the locking arm as we described. So there's one open. And then we'll open this one here as well. And then that's basically opening this cabin right up. The sun may be a little bit too intense on certain days, but you have the options of doing that. Now, it doesn't end there. We actually have these really cool sunshades. So you can have the airflow and the mosquito screen, and with a slight, reduction of sunlight that gets through, but it doesn't stop it that much. If you want to go full opaque, we can move this one this way. And then that one there will give you a full opaque mode for privacy. So you can hold them together, and you can even do like a bit of a mixture of the two if that's what you want, or all the way open. So great feature, but is also an emergency escape hatch as well. So I'm going to close these back up now, and we're going to look at some more things. Okay, so quick inside tech tip on these hatches here. These dog handles have small, low-profile handles that can be accessed from the outside, as long as these are in the unlocked position. Right now, if this is locked from the inside, you cannot get through this hatch from the outside. However, if it is unlocked, this will twist from the outside, allowing you or granting you access from the outside. Although it's a personal decision as to how secure you want to make your vessel, it is popular to leave at least one of these hatches in the unlocked position. Should you ever lock yourself out of the boat, which is entirely possible to do that, you can actually come onto the vessel and let yourself in through one of these emergency escape hatches. The beauty of these hatches is that they are located underneath cushions and usually canvas that's on the boat at the time. So it is kind of hidden away, out of sight, out of mind, as far as an entry point for the boat. But in an emergency, it may just let you in when you really, really need it. So personal preference as to whether to leave it unlocked, but this is not a bad idea. Okay, another Webasto heater vent located down here. This is the only one for this cabin. And these are the louvers, much like other places on the boat. So not in use, they can be closed up and it'll divert airflow pressure to other places on the boat. So I'm just going to close that up right now, but this is most certainly connected to the hot air from the Webasto heater system. You're probably wondering what's inside this hatch. Let's pop it open and take a look. It is a machinery space, so to speak. In here is the Mercury power steering pump. This vessel is equipped with twin Mercury engines, so it does have power steering. The steering at the helm feels very smooth. The reason it does feel smooth is because it does have a power steering system hooked up. You will hear the pump running in the background when you are running your engines. It is located under the floor in this location. It does take an oil in there, but it should not have to ever be topped up. However, periodically checked as a general course of your maintenance schedule is not a bad idea. Okay, so exiting the aft cabin now brings us into this main accommodation space. As you can see, there's lots of light, 360-degree windows all around, and above us is this skylight, or sunroof, should I say. So when we open the sunroof all the way up, it lets in an incredible amount of light in and an incredible amount of air out if you have hot air that's trapped in this environment here. So we'll talk about how to open it later, but what I do want to show you while I'm here in this area is putting this cushion back down here. So there's a clip at the back side of the cushion. I'm just going to undo it with my fingers from around the side. This can be quite awkward if the right technique isn't followed, but once you have the muscle memory for it, it's pretty simple. So you just come around the back, standing to the side. Always stand to the side of it, never in front of it. And with one hand, you want to have it here, the other hand over here. I'm going to show you that this thing here actually is the clip that holds it up there in that little loop. So that's actually where it connects. Always tuck it back down the hole. If you leave it sitting here, what will happen is when you do this, it'll get stuck in this area here and it'll end up potentially punching a hole or at least making a permanent indent into the foam there and damaging the fabric potentially. So just, tuck that back down if it's in the way. Do this one, and then that's in. Okay, so the upholstery style and the seat style in this particular configuration is more of the Euro style one. So you may have two different captain seats here. There's another video on a 28 Axopar, how to make it into a bed. That's pretty typical of the seats that you would see on a 37 Axopar that we get in here. Okay, so to my right, which is the starboard side of the vessel, there's a cushion that you can lift up to expose some storage area. There's actually nothing under this cushion, so I'm not going to pick it up. It's just a flat blank area. But we have lots of safety gear in there at the moment. One of the things I'm going to bring out and talk about later is the owner's pack. So there's a few goodies in here that we're going to talk about in a little bit. I'll leave that off to the side. There's also some extra canvas in here. If you ordered the sun covers for the windows, they're usually going to be located in this locker. It could be in a different locker when you get your boat, but usually down in here is where we put them. Okay, so sitting down at this sofa here, you can extend this table out so you can sit down and have a meal with lots of people. These sinks, which are part of certain configurations, which will open up. As you can see, this one is a hot and cold because it has a hot water tank. And that's all that is. So this particular unit here has these drawers which slide out. If you're wondering what all of these little holes are for, it's so you can make a custom peg configuration. You can stick, let's say, 4 pegs in a certain pattern, and then you can put a plate or a stack of plates in there, or anything you want. Any box or any device or anything you could think of that takes on a certain shape, you can custom make those little pegs to however you want. And that's the same for all the drawers as you work your way down. While we're down in this area, we'll take a really quick look at this fridge that's located here. So it'll hinge from the aft corner. So try and be nice and gentle with it as you open it. Don't force that handle. It does have plastic in there. It's not all metal. So just be nice and gentle as you open it up. Inside, in here, it'll expose the controls. So there's a temperature setting in there and an on and off control. The lights will turn on immediately as soon as you open the door. This is obviously on right now. It's in the powered on position. This comes on and off with a service bank. So if you are plugged into shore power and you want to keep your drinks cold or whatever food is in here cold while you're away, and then when you come back to your boat, you want it to maintain, it's cool. You want to maintain all the things being cool, then you'll need to leave your service bank on. But when you leave your service bank on and you lose shore power, you could have a dead battery when you arrive. So there's a decision to make there as a boat owner as to how you want to do that. One more thing. So before we leave the fridge, I should probably show you an extra element of its design, and that is this slider over here. When you slide it over, it'll reveal the word vent. If you slide it back this way, it's gone. When it's gone, it just closes and seals normally. When you do this, it'll have this extra little indent or detent for that to sit in, thus holding the fridge door in the open or venting position. So when your fridge is off with nothing in it, airflow will, can come in and out of that fridge, and it won't go smelly, right? So that's the best way for long-term storage. So over the winter, you'd leave it off and have it set up like this. Or after each trip, if you're someone who turns their fridge off, empty it out. Obviously, you can leave some things in there, like drinks and stuff like that, and they'll be fine. But this vent mode will stop the fridge from going smelly if it's not actually on. Okay, so if you happen to have the Euro-style bench seat like what's in this boat, I may as well take a moment just to talk about it. So there's 2 bolsters right here that you can pull down. So obviously if you want to sit on the chair, you would have it in this mode. If you want to stand up against it, if you're more of a stand-up driver, then that's what that's for. But I'm going to move them out of the side, out of the way for now. And you see these 2 pins right here. So this one here, this one over here. Oops. Pull, hold, and then the seat back moves all the way back here, so you can get another body in there if you're sitting down for lunch or for dinner. Okay, so I'll move this back again, and then we'll take a look at that sunroof. Okay, so the switch is located just here, just to the left of the throttle and shift controls, and if you push it in the down position, it will go from closed to all the way open. It never opens all the way 100% of the way because it does need some area for it to collect all the fabric in. So where it's stopped now is as far as it will ever open. And then if I just touch touch the close button or the top of the rocker switch, it will close and it will stop at about here. It does it every single time, so don't get caught and walk away from it and think that you're good. You will need to continue to close this manually. Well, it's a press and a hold, I suppose. See, once it gets to that area, it just will never auto close from there. I think it's a safety feature that they've built in. So you're gonna hold the button until it's all the way shut, and that's how that one works. Okay, so moving along, we have all of these buttons along the dash right here. So from left to right, we're gonna have a look at the one named panel lights. The backlighting for everything will come on. This beautiful Axopar logo will illuminate, and as well as all of the writing for each of the rest of the switches. So that's what that switch there does. Your navigation lights will turn on the port and starboard red and green lights up on the bow, as well as the all-around white light on the mast. That will indicate that you're underway and running. So if you're running the boat at night, this is the one you need to have on. Notice that the halo for the anchor light will illuminate even though the button is not depressed when you have the navigation light mode depressed. When I unclick that one, this one will turn off, because the anchor light was actually coming on. The all-around white light and the anchor light is one and the same. So earlier we looked at the anchor light that was on the mast. That is a dual-purpose light. This size of vessel, you can get away with that. As you get bigger, there are different lights for anchoring versus running. But this size vessel, one light, one white light, and that's all you get. Okay, so if I press the anchor light by itself, then only it will illuminate and the navigation lights will be off. So if you are at anchor, this is the one you need. At nighttime, obviously, during the day you don't need it. And then the deck light, you have this one here, which will turn on the lights outside. And then we have the roof lights, which if we have a look in the aft section here, those two down lights back there, they will come on and off with this particular light. Okay, the ambient lights, they're the ones that will light up on the underside of these panels here. So if you keep looking up there, I'll turn it on. So you would have roof light and ambient light on together generally if you are in this area at nighttime, and it creates really quite a nice look and environment. If you want just some ambient lights and more of a kind of lower light experience, then you turn the roof lights off and keep just the ambient lights, and that's also quite a nice warm experience in here. Okay, so if the boat is equipped with underwater lights, you press that and that will turn them on. Usually it'll be a blue and a white light combo. So you'll have to depress and repress to move to the next mode. So if it's blue and you want to turn into white, then you do that quick unpress and press again and it'll move to the next one. Or you can do it one more time and it'll move to like a sweeping mode, and then one more time again and it'll move back to the beginning, right? If you don't have underwater lights equipped, chances are this light will still be here, or sorry, this button will still be here. It just won't be hooked up to anything. So if you have underwater lights, you'll know it, but that's where the switch is for it. Okay, so over here we have the wiper controls. We have the two controls right here. On a 37 Axopar, there is a electronic module which will keep the two wipers in sync, or they'll keep them synchronized. So there they go there. Right now it's running in the intermittent mode, which is what it will default to, and the window wash button will wash the window, but if you give it a quick tap, it will change between the speeds. See how it's now gone to like speed 1, you can call that, and then you tap it again, and it goes to speed 2, and then you tap it one more time, the window wash button that is, and it will go back to intermittent mode, right? And then to turn it off entirely, hit that wiper button. If we press and hold the window wash button, that little reservoir that we looked at earlier that was up in the bow, the area there underneath the V-berth, it will run a little tiny pump that's located on the side and open a solenoid, and it will run water from that little tank up in the bow locker up to here, and that's one closed water line, like just that one tank to these. We have the mid-bilge, so if there is water in the mid-bilge, and a float switch is triggered, then this light will illuminate when the float switch is on, or you can press this and it will turn the mid-bilge pump on manually. So you can pump it all the way down to its lowest potential point. Same with the aft bilge, all the same things apply to that one. It's just located in the aft area of the boat. Auxiliary 1 and Auxiliary 2 are typically not hooked up to anything, but they are there if you want to install something else. You have 2 additional switches in here that you can get a service technician, or if you're a do-it-yourselfer, they can utilize these switches to hook up something else. Okay, so that'll do it for the switches. We'll cut there, and then we're going to move to another topic. Okay, so we have made mention to all of the battery switches a couple times throughout this walkthrough here. But if you have a look down here, I'll go through it just one more time for you guys. You have the starboard start battery, the port start battery, the service battery, and the bow thruster / windlass battery switches all here. These are all in the on positions. I haven't actually adjusted whether the batteries are on or off yet. I'm just sliding these out of the way. That is turning them all off. And sliding these back down here. That's turning them all on. So you'll notice that the little light will turn on and off as the batteries are being connected and or disconnected from the system. So it's really easy to know at a glance if it's actually in a closed or an open circuit situation just by looking at that indicator light right there. So just for the rest of this video, we're going to have these all on, so everything is working and powered up, and we can take full advantage of the fact that we can know that all systems are go, or systems nominal. Okay, so one of the systems we want to look at here is the bow thruster itself. So 2 buttons side by side, both say on. That's because to turn it on, you want to press both of them at once. And this here will give you a indicator light telling you that the system is powered. If it is not powered, it will not work. If it is powered, it will work. If you do not give any user inputs to this control for a period of time, I can't remember the exact number, but it's about 5 to 10 minutes, it's somewhere in there. This will just turn off all by itself, just to conserve power, I suppose, or to disconnect for safety reasons and things of that nature. But this light will also turn out. So you, like, if you're driving and you want to see if it's on or off, that light will go off if it's timed out. Okay, so if you want to keep it alive, just give it a squirt every now and then, and that'll just keep it alive and reset that counter, that 5 to 10 minute counter that's running in the background. Located directly beneath that is the trim tab system. So for your tabs to come to the all the way up position, you have to press this down. Okay, so it does actually say the words tabs up. So down for all the way, for tabs all the way up. And then from there on out, you need to be looking at these pictures and move the joystick to the picture that corresponds with what you want the boat to do. Okay, so if you go up on the joystick, you'll see that this is a down arrow and it's talking about the bow of the vessel. So if you want the bow to go down, you press and hold down. What's actually happening at that point is both of the trim tabs at the transom are going down together, and they'll continue to go down all the way until they bottom out. And then this one here will continue to go all the way up until you bottom out. Okay, so this here is a picture of the vessel as viewed from either behind or in front. It's hard to know as it's just a silhouette, but either way, you want the boat to, it'll be from behind actually. So if you want the boat to roll to port, you would click it that way. So if I'm running and I'm leaning, you know, to my right or to starboard, and I want to roll it to port, I'll do that to correct it. So that's fairly intuitive. The boat will roll in the direction that you press this. And what's actually happening to make the boat roll to port is the starboard tab is actually the one that's going to go down in reality. So port roll, starboard tab goes down. Starboard roll, the port tab goes down. That's because the flow of water is going to hit that port side tab in a starboard roll situation and kind of lift your port quarter up, which then in turn will roll your starboard bow down. That's kind of what's happening there. Okay. All right. So if we move down here, we're going to see a map pocket. So almost no one actually carries physical maps these days, but you can put all sorts of stuff in there. We have some basic literature that we hand over which is encouraged that you go through those when you have a moment to yourself. And we typically just hang the keys on here or put them down below, and there'll be some spare keys here. So these will be in the owner's pack or in this map pocket usually for the keys. So I'll just put these aside for now. Okay, so your Mercury keys for your engines will have these Mercury symbols on them. They will have these numbers here which will correspond to the exact ones that will fit your boat. There is a limited number of keys out there, but you know, one in every, I'm not sure how many they have, but they have quite a few. But these ones here would generally be a match set, so it'll be the same ignition key number for either of them. So either one will work in either ignition. Right. You have the first switch is just for accessories. So if you have any accessories hooked up, then that'll just turn those on. And then the next one is turning the engine computer on. Right, you hear that beep. So one noise to get used to is the noise it will make if you have the start batteries off. So let's just turn both of those. I've just turned off the port and starboard batteries. And this is pretty common. If you come here and you put the keys in, turn it on, it'll do this. And it just will not stop until you come down here and you turn your port and starboard batteries on. Right? And then they are off again. All right, so it's basically saying, hey, I can't go any further. Actually, no, it does stop after a little bit. But yeah, it's basically saying, hey, I can't go any further till you turn the main power on. So anyway, there's a little control here on the port side, on the port lever, if you have a dual engine setup, and it's got up and down, and that is the trim for the engine. So if you have a look through the rear window there and you press the down button, your engines will trim to the down position. Okay, so now that we've trimmed our engines all the way down and into the water, it will be safe to start them. Never attempt to start them when they're trimmed up. It'll be very loud if you start them when they're out of the water. You'll know about it pretty quickly. If that's the case, just shut them down right away and put those engines in the water. I know everyone's done that once or twice. But if you look up here, we have some more little rocker switches here. These are actually individual controls. So this would do just the port trim. So I'm going to have my finger on this one, and if you guys look all the way behind us and look at just the port engine, you see that one goes up and down by itself, and the switch next to it is just the starboard, which would just go up and down by itself, and then the handle switch is actually both together like we've already seen. So I press that one and they both do their thing together. So you have three options there. Okay. All right, so also down here, we will see that we have a VHF radio. Put in the on position. It will probably ask you to put some sort of a number in there, what's called an MMSI number. You can program that, and we'll talk about that in more detail at another time. See there, it tells you to do that. All you need to do is just hit clear. 16 is the channel to monitor. So pressing up and down here will get you through the channels. Up, down. If you want to get to a Canadian alpha channel, or any alpha channel, should I say, let's just say 83 alpha, for example, which is the Coast Guard. So there's 83, but that's actually not it. What we need is 83 alpha. You would think it would be between 83 and 84, the whole numbers, but it's actually not. So to get to alpha channels, you need to keep going up until you get this little 10 next to the main numbers. So 1083 would actually be 83 alpha. So that right there, 1083, that's 83 alpha. So another popular alpha channel is most mariners will want you to hail them on 66 alpha. So if you are looking at, it says 66A on the VHF channel to call in and say, hey, I'm here, I'm looking for my slip assignment, for example. Most mariners will say yes. 66 alpha is the one you need to call us on. In any emails or literature or any like guide you look it up in, it'll tell you that channel. 66A is represented on the Simrad system by 1066. Okay. All right. One other thing to notice, I think here, is to look at the little CAN up here in the top corner. That is actually indicating to us that we are on the Canadian frequency band. There's two other bands. One is called USA and the other one is called INT, or International. So those three frequency bands are similar to the Canadian ones, but there's going to be a few channels that are different and the overlap isn't perfect. So if you're in Canada, make sure it says Canada. If you're in the USA, make sure it says USA. Okay. It's in the menu system to change that. We won't go that deep into this right now, but that's that. So on the side here is a volume button, and this will just do the normal volume controls, and you'll see it on the left of the screen. The volume will go up and down. And then if you press this volume dash squil, so this stands for squelch, SQL. So I'll press this one, and then what happens is my little arrow moves over here to the right bar, and it'll have the squelch control. So the more squelch you go, or sorry, should I say the less squelch you have, the more it will give you background noise. So let me just explain that by showing you. Go down, go down, go down. Okay. When no one is talking on a channel, that's actually what it sounds like. It's just like this background radiation noise, right? So squelch is there to basically try and figure out if someone's actually talking or if it's just background noise, and it will cut out the background noise that you don't want to listen to. So if you got this all the way down and the thing is just like doing this all the time and no one's actually speaking, you can come in here and you can dial it up just until it stops doing that and then just stay there. If you put it up too high, what will happen is you could miss people trying to call, because if your squelch is too high and you have, let's just say, a medium kind of strength signal coming through, it might cut that out because it may mistake it for background noise. So definitely have it as low as you can handle it, and just only put it up if it's a nuisance, right? Don't crank it too high if it doesn't need to be. So we'll leave it nice and low for now. Okay, so that'll probably do with that one. We won't go too much of a deep dive into the VHF right now. Okay, so I'm going to go one more up because I was too far down and just noise was coming in the background. To make a call, I should probably discuss that one. That's this button here on the side, right? So if you hold this button down, make the call you need to make, then hopefully people will hear you. If you press the button, let me change to another channel. If you press the button and you see a little TX appear up in the corner there, TX stands for transmit and RX stands for receive. So if something's coming through and it's detecting that, a little RX will appear in the corner. But if you're wondering if you are transmitting, then that's what that little TX means there in the corner there as well. Okay. Yeah, the distress button on top will basically send out an SOS essentially via the VHF system, but that's more of a digital select calling situation. So you need to have this hooked up with an MMSI, and that's another conversation, and it'll take a while to go through. Okay, so it actually says busy and not RX up the top. So when someone's calling through, it'll say busy and not RX. I was actually incorrect with my statement there earlier. Okay, so let's put that one aside. I will just turn it off for now so it doesn't get in our way. I'll give you two options here. One is to turn off the whole system, and one is to turn off only the handset. We're going to go through the rest of the system soon, so I'll turn just the handset off, just so that is not going to turn on and bug us for the rest of the video. Okay, so making our way back up to here, we land on the screens, which is the funnest part. So there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of things to talk about. So there's plenty of other videos on how to make routes and waypoints and tracks and set up your SIMRAD account in more detail, but I'll do a short glossed version for this video here, because that's the nature of the video we're trying to make. So more details, just go check out those other videos. So first thing to note is that most of the time there's going to be this little button up in the top left-hand corner that will give you a main menu display here. And then once you're in the main menu, it will then turn into a settings wheel, which will get you into the settings of the screen. There's way too many things in here to go through them all today, but there's a few key things which I think are pretty important. So this services or clouds, or cloud button here. When I talk about making a SIMRAD account, if you want to log in and synchronize your routes, tracks, and waypoints, what you would do is you would connect it to the internet first, and then log into your account. So going to the internet is as simple as heading on down here to wireless, and then you will connect to the internet by going Wi-Fi networks, right? And then you can find the one you want to connect to. So if you connect to the internet up the top, that's another way of doing it. Actually, you hit this button here that says connect to internet, and it will give you all, it will give you all the options. It will give you all the options of the available networks in your area, right? So what you usually do in most situations is you'll turn your phone hotspot on, and then once you have that hotspot on, you find it on your screen, and then you connect to it, you remember it with the little checkbox and connect to it automatically, hopefully. That's probably a good way to set it up. So you don't have to think about it moving forward. If you turn your hotspot on, the screen should just connect right to it. And then you can go about synchronizing your routes and your waypoints and your tracks. Okay. So moving right along, what we have, let's go back to the main menu. Let's always start there, is a handful of other tiles. The chart one will simply take you to the chart. And then once we're here, we can pinch to zoom. We can select areas on the map by putting our cursor on it. We can set up a route. So we go new route, and then let's just say we want to start it here. Okay, let's put a little green circle, so that's the start of my route. Let's just say I want to head out here to Deep Cove. Oops, I've accidentally put a press in there, so if I put my cursor on, on top of that, I can just say remove, and that should remove that last one, and then remove, and that removes that last one there. Okay, so now I want to do this. I'll put my cursor over here, and that'll make a straight line all the way through the land, but that's okay, because I want to show you, if you have a CMAP card, you can go ahead and just press the easy routing button and say entire route, and it'll run this calculation as to what it needs to do to add additional waypoints along the body of water to get you around without cutting right through the land. If you want to make a route, it's actually it does a better job when you do it on your phone. So if you do it on your phone and then you synchronize it, that's the best way to go, in my humble opinion. But it does a pretty good job of getting you through. So here's some shallow area, and it's still got us going around that. It's okay. You always want to just double check that the machine has made the right decisions. It is just a machine after all. You know, if you want to, you can select a waypoint that you do not like, and you can move it. So I would move it down to here, for example, and then you hit keep, and then that one should go boop, all the way down to here. Let's try that again. Move. Finish moving. There we go. Okay, and then this isn't working for us, obviously. So we're gonna take that one. We're gonna move this. Why don't we just put it right here? That one makes a lot more sense. So we finish moving. So this is how we're editing the track or the route that the computers put for us, giving it more of a human touch, right? Okay, and then we can just go ahead and save that, and then give it a name and save it into the system. So if we call this, let's call it Van to Deep Cove. I may not be able to get all of that in there. I can, only just. Then if I ever want to select it again, there's a couple of different ways to do it, and I'll show you them really quickly. You go to waypoints, and then under the waypoints area, there's a tab called routes. And then we have Van to Deep Cove, which is the one I just made. And then I would say show or start. So show just simply brings it up on the screen and selects it. And then from there, you would have to hit, start, I suppose. So here you see it. I've got my cursor right over the top of it. I can just hit that right there and it will recognize that my cursor is on top of something that's part of a larger route. So I can do this and I can just hit start the entire route or start from the selected waypoint. So in this case, starting from this waypoint or starting the entire route, start to finish, is one and the same as I have my cursor over the first waypoint in the route. But let's just say I moved to the next waypoint in the series over here. There it is right there. So let's just say I'd left my home port. I'm past the starting waypoint, which is over here, right? Let's just say my boat's already here. So that is a situation in which you would come over here and select that one there. And then you would say, bring out the side menu. And then it would recognize still that it's part of that larger route, van to Deep Cove. So I want to do that one. And then it would actually give me the options I had before, but this time I'm starting from this particular waypoint instead of the beginning. So pressing this one will go all the way back to the start, and then pressing this one is going to start it from the second waypoint in the series. I want to go in the forwards direction. And then there you go. So now it's actually, this is the start. So that works pretty well. Another note on the chart navigation, I suppose, is these boxes that are around each area. So you'll notice when I touch an area of the screen, if I hit this area here, it will put this box around the sidebar, it's called, or the main panel here, which is the chart. It'll have an orange box around that. That is important because when you press this little side menu, it'll bring it out based on the active area of the screen, right? So right now this is coming out based upon what's happening here. If I do this and select this area, this will be entirely different set of options based upon that selection area there, right? So I can give it a second bar. And let's just say I want it to be fuel, right? Now I've got this double bar set up, bang, bang, right? I have a lot more data going on there. And, if you find that you can't get enough data points in that one single bar, then you can go to a double bar. And then you can just kind of make them whatever you want. So they have a set of preset ones as well. So if you say, make it general or cruise or whatever, it'll select like from a generic list of things that it thinks you might like, but you can change them one by one. So for example, let's just say, I've chosen both of these as like a starting point. You see that I've got GPS position on this bar and GPS position on that bar. Obviously entirely redundant as they are both showing exactly the same thing. You can press and hold, and then it'll give you this hierarchy of different options here. So what's something we don't have yet? So battery voltage, there we go. Let's just say, so we want to put that one there. So I want to know what my service bank is doing, right? That's my service battery voltage. Because maybe over here, I have my Mercury screen set up, for example. Whoops. Yeah. There you go. So you'll see I have port and starboard port and starboard battery voltages. So I'm going to start my port engine now and just watch this one go down and then back up again, right? But the starboard one stays still because these are not connected. However, the port bank will charge the service bank. So you notice that one jumped right up to around the same voltage because they will link together. And then I'm going to shut it down and we're going to look. So if you stay looking at this battery voltage right here, which is the service bank, I'll turn that one off and you'll see that one drop down immediately because the alternator is no longer sending charge current to it. So that was port engine, just for reference. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the key switch on the starboard engine. I'm going to start that one up. I'm going to see that this one's going to jump. At least it should. Whoops. Every now and then you'll start the engines and it will reset the computers, so it will need to reestablish a communication. This is actually pretty normal. We've looked into this. There's not a lot that we can do about it. It's just what happens sometimes. So if we give it a moment, the engine data will come back. But for the most part, everything on the screen will stay operational apart from a few pieces of data. Okay, so here we go. Everything's back online, and then we have our voltage of 14.5 volts, which indicates a charging voltage. If you're ever curious on that, feel free to go ahead and Google it and look up how battery chargings work. But the general rule of thumb is if it's above about 13.5, you know that you're looking at a system that it's in a state of charge. Up to about 14.5, which is what this one is at here. That's indicating a charging voltage. As you approach 15 and go past 15, you're in the danger zone. That's too high, something's wrong. If you are not seeing voltages above 13.5 volts, 14 volts, if you're not seeing that when you're running your engines and your alternator's not working, chances are that you will get an alarm on the screen and it will tell you that there's a problem, but that's typically what you're looking for. Okay. Let's start both of those. Okay, so we have this Mercury screen up. Let's talk about this for a little bit. These little trim gauges here, these are not the trim tabs. These are the trim of the engines. So I go, let's say, up on the port side. See that there? That will give us our trim. Go down again, up on the starboard, on the switch on the back, go down again, or up with both, and then they both come up together. So generally, the faster you go, you're going to introduce a little bit more trim, and that is essentially getting you a little bit more efficient. That's generally how these boats work. Some of them are equipped with active trim, and right now it's in the on position. There are two ways to control active trim, or at least turn it on and off. One is from here, on that sidebar that pulls out. How did I do that? I just press this Mercury button here on the side. So from any screen, anywhere, anytime, you have these three options you can pull out and just get to quick menus, right? So there is a Mercury quick menu, and there it is there, and it'll give you a couple of really basic options. But vessel control is where I went to get the active trim. So right now we're on profile 3. We generally send them out the door on profile 3. It's a nice balanced profile. The higher the profile number, they go from 1 to 5. Then the more aggressive the trim will be. So it'll kick in earlier. So the lower, like it'll kick in at lower speeds. So these profiles are like a curve, if you want to call it that. So you start going faster, these will trim a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more as they go. So a profile of 1, it'll just trim a little bit each time at like higher speeds, and then you get to profile 5, and it's trimming pretty aggressively, pretty early. Like you're not going that fast before it really starts to lift it out, which is why we find that profile 3 is about the right, like the right balance, but you can choose whatever profile works for you. If you do not want to use active trim and you want to have full control over your trim, you just simply disable the entire active trim system, and that way it won't do any automatic trimming for you. In fact, the term active trim is a little bit of a misnomer in a lot of ways. It's not really active, like it isn't getting feedback from anything and then making decisions based on algorithms and things like that. What's actually happening is it's a predetermined curve set. So, it will say, hey, I'm going X speed, trim to, this level because I have this profile set. And that's kind of all it's doing. So it's very much like an automatic trim system is probably a better way to describe it. When I run the boat, I personally like to not use active trim, and I like to just dial it in like myself until I'm at that really sweet spot. Once you get to know your boat, you'll get to know exactly where it likes to be at certain speeds. One way you can monitor that actually when you're driving is to look at this metric right here, and it's a fuel economy metric. So if you just maintain the same RPM and then just tweak the trim and watch the fuel economy. Tweak the trim, watch the fuel economy. Is it going up? Is it going down? What effect did that trim change just have on your fuel economy? So what you might see is you trim up, fuel economy gets better, which is what you want. And then you trim it up a little bit more, gets better again, trim it up a little bit more, gets better again, keep trimming it up, and it starts getting worse. You're like, well, now we've gone too far. Dial it back to where you were, where you had that peak performance. And then you've just found your sweet spot for running at that speed. So that's a manual thing. But as I said, you get to know your boat, and you will know that, hey, I cruise at X amount of knots or miles per hour, and I know that when I set my trim to a certain number over here, that's like how I like to run the boat, and you'll get to dial that in once you get used to running your own boat around. Okay, so other controls that are in here, which are pretty exciting to talk about, is the sports exhaust. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stop talking, and you guys are going to listen to the engines. So here we go. So kind of a muscle car mode, basically. Does it have any effect on performance? I really am not sure entirely, but I don't think so. I think they just sound cool. So, you want some street cred? Put the sports exhaust on. You want it to be a little bit more silent running, then sports exhaust off. So there is a troll control feature in here. So you must enable it and be in idle gear. I can't show you that at the dock, but it does have that in there. And then there's also a cruise control feature as well. So you can target a certain number of knots, and then enable that, and it'll try and maintain that for you. So if you are finding you're in kind of confused seas and things like that, and you're constantly kind of messing with your throttles or whatever, and you're actually looking to go a certain speed, then this will help you maintain that if you want to use that feature. Okay, moving up the quick menu options here, we have this audio control to the side. Whoop, there we go. So this will give you quick access to your audio system. One huge question that we get all the time is, hey, I can't pair my phone. I've looked through all the menus. I've looked through here. I've gone to this section. I go to every area I can find on my screen, and I just cannot figure out how to pair my phone. That's because you can't do it from your screen. But you can do it. If there's two ways to do it, let's just do that right now. So if you back up a little bit here, and I'll squeeze on through, we'll open this up. Excuse the mess, I moved some things off camera, but if we have a look down under here, and we spoke about this Fusion controller here. Okay, so you see this little Bluetooth symbol right near the power button. If you press and hold that, what you're going to get is this pairing mode that turns on. Okay, so now it'll start to flash, and when it's flashing, it's in pairing mode. It won't last forever, but it will last plenty long enough to open up your menu system on your phone. So why don't I do that? I will try and find the Bluetooth menu. It's in here somewhere, and then I'm going to look for it, and I'm going to pair to it. It'll be called something like, okay, right here, MSBB 100. So that's the black box that's the black box 100. That's the one you're going to be looking for, MSBB 100. Once you pair to that, let's go upstairs. Okay, and then I don't know if I actually paired. Let's try that. MSBB 100. Okay, so let's pair to that one. Pairing. Pair request, we pair to it. Okay, so we should be in there. Okay, so once we're paired, from the audio menu, we have this source selection here. You see a little side arrow that indicates there's more options over in virtual land over here. And then we have a whole list of stuff we can choose from. So BT is the Bluetooth. And this should be me. So what have I been listening to? Oh, a bit of Rodriguez. Anyways, yeah, so that's how that one works. Okay, there are volume controls here. So volume slider, up and down. Which I guess maybe we'll go to the next track. We'll see what comes on next. That's better. Oh. Whoa, hello. That's pretty loud. All right, we have some sliders in here as well. I'm just going to pause that so I don't have to talk over the music. But these slider options, you'll have a zone 1 and a zone 2. So zone 1 is typically always inside the cabin. All your speakers inside the cabin are going to be on zone 1. If you have the additional speaker package, you're going to have the second zone outside the boat. Right now, it is not linked to zone 1. I would recommend not linking it to zone 1. If it is linked, maybe unlink it unless you really want it linked. But this way, you can listen to music inside and not disturb people outside, and vice versa. So it works good as a kind of inside-outside type situation. Or there's an all zones option here where you can, or a master control, sorry, should I say, where it'll actually control everything all together, right? So yeah, so this is like the master control, I suppose, right? There's some settings in here, which is not really much to see, and that's kind of how that one, that's kind of the basics of how that works. So there's other sources in here as well, such as like if you say USB, that one actually is connecting you to the USB plug-in that we looked at earlier in the video. We saw that just near the controller we were just at for the Bluetooth. Okay, alrighty. So that's the audio system. Let's look at some more tiles. So we have the Echo. Let's just do that again. We have Echo, which is going to give you basically whatever your transducer is showing you. So because we are in the selected area here, we pull up this side menu and we can make some various changes to the way it displays. I'm not going to go into the full depths of all of this, but one important thing to know is the more options area, you have this oops, I beg your pardon. There's a pause, this one right here. If you ever get here and there's no data at all, it will actually just be a blank screen. It won't even have what we see now, and it'll just say paused. Then you'll need to come into this menu, go to the the extra options area, find that pause thing, and unpause it, and it'll keep going. So that gets a lot of people. So I'll definitely take the time to show you that. And there's also the palette option as well, which is a nice one. If we're going to talk about just one other thing, let's just talk about the palette. So some people like this or this, right? Personally, this is my favorite, but everyone's got their own bottom coloring. So the bottom coloring will kind of give you that different color to make sure that you're pretty confident that everything below that is going to be solid. Okay. All right, so that is that one. Let's go back to this main menu. Side scan, down scan. So side scan is basically shooting out the side, so it gives you this strange kind of, oh, here we go. Here's an example. If you come across this, we know what to do now. We hit the advanced button. Oh, sorry, not advanced. The more options, and then we unpause it. And then there it is. So it's kind of looking to the left and to the right a little bit, so you can see things kind of to the side of you. I'm not much of a high-tech fisherman, so the use case scenario is something you have to look up yourself or speak to someone who knows a lot more about fishing than I do, but it does have that feature. Now there's a radar on this boat, and most of them will come with a radar. So right now it'll say no radar because it's not initiated. So a lot of these electronic devices will, ask you to turn them on additionally somehow. If we open our side menu again, and then we'll hit our sources button. For some reason it's saying this is invalid. I'm not sure why, but we will choose Halo 20 Plus, and then it's radar and standby. Fantastic. And then we hit the transmit button and it will start transmitting. So detecting, and then away it goes. And it should start doing what it does. Okay, so up the top left, it'll give you a like a range marking. These ranges are talking about the rings, right? So from you right in the middle to that ring, that's 1/4 of a nautical mile. From there to there. From that ring to that ring, same, 1/4 of a nautical mile. So when we do this, we increase our range settings, we're now saying, okay, from the center to the first ring, that's 1/8 of a nautical mile to there, and then same deal as we zoom in and out. All right. Lots to talk about in this area, but I don't think we should get too deep into radar settings. So we'll just back out of that one and keep moving through. Okay, so one handy screen that Axopar kind of designed, implemented, and installed on these screens from the factory is their own tile they call Axopar. So this one can be handy for a few different reasons. I'm going to get rid of this audio out of the way here. So if you just tap it, it should move out of the way. So load this, give you this warning thing, you move through it, you accept it. Down here is essentially a bunch of tabs you can select from. So boat status, for example. Probably the most useful page here. So it'll give you your service battery, your engine battery, port, engine battery, starboard, all on the same screen, the fuel all on the same screen, engine hours, is Mercury throwing any faults? No, it's okay. And then it's kind of made an extrapolation about how many hours left until your next service as well. So obviously 100 hours is the service interval if you were to do the math here. So we have 11 on, and then there's 89 to go. So add those together, what do you get? 100 hours. It's going to continue to do that. Every 100 hours, it will give you a cue to say, hey, service me. But it will not give you a cue to service the engines if it's been less than 100 hours, but more than 12 months, because the service interval is actually 100 hours or 12 months, whatever comes first. And that's the key, whatever comes first. So not everyone puts 100 hours on their engines every year. In fact, that would be the exception to the rule if you are regularly putting on over 100 hours every year. So generally fall into a category of fall service or winter service. When you haul your boat out, because you do need to haul your boat out to service these engines, take note of other service and maintenance items which you should be doing. So the bottom paint condition, if you have a boat that has bottom paint on it, which is pretty much all of them in this area, because we are in a saltwater environment, we do have anti-fouling bottom paint on there, and that will generally slough away. This is an ablative bottom paint that's on here, and most people use ablative bottom paints these days. This is a very fast vessel, so driving the boat makes it fall away. So the faster and more often you drive, the quicker that ablation will happen, where it just gets lighter and thinner. Therefore, the less protection you're going to have against marine growth sticking basically to the bottom of the boat. So make sure you're doing that. Throwing a coat of wax on the hull is a good idea. When you're out of the water as well, it's much easier to do that when it's out of the water. In fact, it's almost impossible with these boats because they're so low. It's very hard to do a hull wax job unless you're out of the water. So check that one out. And of course, changing all your zincs. You may need to be doing it more than once a year. Like check on that regularly, but changing them out of the water is definitely the way to go. So check on those as well. Okay, so that's all the recommended yearly maintenance items that are coming to my mind right now. Okay, so there's another little tile here called Instruments, which isn't something that I personally use a lot, but you may find that you like it better. But Mercury already have their own instruments. The navigation screens already have lots of data themselves. And coming here, we can put a new instrument cluster in here. Okay, so we are going to use a built-in template, and we can just say, hey, I want to know engine stuff, right? And I can build myself an engine gauge cluster, and it looks pretty cool. So, have some fun playing around with this. Kind of build your own adventure on this one, really. So I won't get too deep into the weeds on that. So that's what that one there is for. There's a video tile, but there's no actual video cameras hooked up on this one, so just ignore that one for now. The navigation tile. So if we are actively going to navigate, right? So let's just say we are navigating right now, which we are. So we are in a navigation mode because we selected one earlier. What it's going to do is it's going to give you this kind of 3D perspective view, and it'll point the direction you're going, and tell you which way to steer and things like that. We really aren't moving right now, so we don't really have a lot of data to go off. The depth should be reading right now, and occasionally you might need to interact with the system to get it to read properly. So we do find this happens occasionally. This is a really great opportunity to dive into the menu system. So we go to that settings button right to the left, right to the left. We go to the settings button that's up the top left-hand corner of the screen, and we want to go down to network, right? Because when we're talking about network, we're not really talking about a network of computers. We're talking about the network of equipment that's all together on this larger electronics package. That's what we're talking about. And the depth transducer is actually part of that larger network. So that's the area we want to go to. So if we go to sources, this is essentially saying, hey, where am I going to find, which piece of equipment do I need to talk to or listen to get the depth, right? Like that's what this is all about. Which piece of equipment do I need to listen to get my heading, right? Like that's what this is about, because you can have multiple sources for things, and you can say, hey, listen to this compass, but not that compass, right? But the easiest thing to do is just come here and just hit auto select and then hit start, and it will go through a predetermined list of the most important things it thinks it should choose to get you depth readings. And if we have a look over here, look what's just happened. The depth has just come back to life. So if you ever find yourself with a series of dashes, and it's not reading depth, and you know you have a depth transducer, go ahead and do that auto select under the sources area, because it really works quite well. I'm glad it wasn't reading, so I could show you guys that in real time. Now, there is a really rare chance that doesn't work, and there's one more little thing you can do. You'll need to do this when you initially install a new transducer, and that is come to this echo section, and that is essentially exactly related and only for echo sounders and depth transducers. So there could be some things in here which aren't set up right. One thing to look is like, are you doing multi-source or single source? For the most part, we always choose the multi-source. It's happier that way. And then there's an installation tab here in which you tell it which transducer you have, but it actually knows. So we actually have a 3-in-1 transducer. When you plug it in and go through this, it should find it by itself, and you can go through that installation mode, and then all the features should come to life once the quote-unquote virtual installation, right? You have the physical installation where you put it on the boat, plug it in. The virtual installation has to happen on the screens. We commission the vessels like that, but if for whatever reason they forget, because there's been like a full shutdown of power for a while, if your battery's gone flat, I'm not sure. Like, computers can forget. You need to reset your router at home sometimes, so you may need to do that from time to time. Alrighty, so I'm going to bring us back to these home screens, and I am going to wrap up the electronics conversation there. So I think that wraps it up for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey through this 37 Axopar, and we very much appreciate that you decided to go with an Axopar, or that you are deciding to go with an Axopar and you're looking for a more in-depth look inside of it. So this has been Alex with Revolution Yacht Experience on behalf of Freedom Marine, signing off. Thank you.